I watched my sister Emily sign the movie deal for Whispers in the Rain, my book, my words, my soul poured onto pages, and felt the aneurysm bloom in my brain like a dark flower. The pen was still in her hand when I hit the floor. The movie producer was still clapping. My mother was crying tears of joy, and I was dying on the marble floor of the publishing house, blood trickling from my nose, watching my sister smile, that perfect smile she'd stolen from our father. Then everything went white. I woke up on my 18th birthday. I sat bolt upright in my childhood bed, gasping, my hands flying to my head. No blood, no pain. Just the faded purple walls I'd begged to repaint for years, and the sound of my mother's voice downstairs, sharp and impatient. "Clara, your sister needs her breakfast. Stop being lazy." I looked at my hands. Young, smooth, the callus from holding pens for 12-hour writing sessions was gone. The scar from where I'd burned myself making Emily's celebratory dinner was missing. My phone, my old phone, the one I'd replaced 4 years ago, buzzed on the nightstand. The date glowed at me. September 3rd, 2015. 7 years. I'd gone back 7 years. I'd been 35 years old. I'd been dead. And now I was 18 again. And Whispers in the Rain hadn't been written yet. Emily hadn't stolen it yet. I hadn't spent the better part of a decade slowly, agonizingly pouring my heart into a story only to have my younger sister, my beautiful, charismatic, utterly talentless sister, take it from me and claim it as her own. "Clara!" My mother's voice again, louder now. "I'm not going to ask you again." I climbed out of bed on shaking legs. In the mirror, my 18-year-old face stared back at me, plain, serious, with our mother's nose and none of Emily's delicate features. I looked exhausted even then. I remembered why. I'd stayed up until 3 in the morning the night before, writing the first chapter of what would become Whispers in the Rain. The notebook was on my desk, purple, spiral-bound, filled with my cramped handwriting. The beginning of everything. I walked over and picked it up, my hands trembling. The words were exactly as I remembered them. The rain came down in sheets, and with it came the memories I'd tried so hard to forget. 7 years from now, Emily would ask to borrow this. 7 years from now, I would say yes, because Emily always asked to borrow things, my clothes, my books, my money, my dreams, and I always said yes, because saying no to Emily meant dealing with my mother's disappointment, my father's lectures about family loyalty, and Emily's tears. 7 years from now, Emily would take this notebook and every notebook that came after it. She would take them when I was at my receptionist job, the job I worked to pay for Emily's college because our parents couldn't afford both of us. And of course, Emily's education was more important. She would take them and type them up and submit them to an agent under her own name. And when I confronted her, she would cry. She would tell our parents I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin her success. She would say she'd written the book herself, that I was delusional, that I needed help. And they would believe her because Emily was beautiful and charming, and I was just Clara. Boring, responsible Clara who existed to make everyone else's life easier. The book would be published. It would become a phenomenon. Emily would go on talk shows and smile and lie. She would thank our parents in the dedication. She would never mention my name. I would scream and rage and try to prove it was mine, but I had no evidence. The notebooks were gone. My laptop had died, taking the early drafts with it. And who would believe the jealous older sister over the sweet young ingenue who'd captured America's heart? I had tried to move on. I had tried to write something else. But the truth was, Whispers in the Rain had been my masterpiece. I'd poured 7 years of pain and hope and dreams into those pages. I'd written it at 2 a.m. after 12-hour shifts. I'd written it on buses and during lunch breaks and in the margins of my life. And then it was gone. And then I died. "Clara!" I tucked the notebook into my backpack, a ancient, battered thing that I remembered Emily mocking, and went downstairs. The kitchen looked exactly as I remembered. My mother stood at the stove, perfectly coiffed, even at 7 a.m., making Emily's favorite breakfast, Belgian waffles with strawberries. My father sat at the table reading the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose. And Emily, God, Emily looked so young. 20 years old, home from her sophomore year at college for the weekend, wearing one of my sweaters that she'd borrowed months ago. "Finally, honey," my mother said without looking at me. "Your sister needs to eat before she drives back to school. Make yourself useful and set the table." I moved on autopilot, pulling plates from the cupboard. This was my role. The helper. The background character in my own family's story. Clara's been writing again, my father said, not looking up from his paper. There was disapproval in his voice. I saw the light under her door last night. Writing, my mother said, the word dripping with disdain. When is she going to focus on something practical? She's supposed to be looking for a real job, not wasting time with fantasies. I like that Clara writes, Emily said sweetly, and my mother's entire demeanor softened. It's creative, right, Clara? I looked at my sister, my beautiful, poisonous sister, and saw her exactly as she was. The way she tilted her head, the way her eyes didn't quite match her smile. She'd been sizing up my writing even then, I realized, calculating its worth. Right, I said flatly. Emily frowned slightly. This wasn't how I usually responded. Usually I beamed at her, grateful for any scrap of support in a house that saw me as a disappointment. Are you okay? She asked. You seem different. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. My mother placed a perfect stack of waffles in front of Emily. You need to sleep more, Clara. You look terrible. I sat down with my own plate. The last waffle, the burned one, the one with no strawberries, and ate in silence while my family talked about Emily's classes, Emily's friends, Emily's promising future. I'd heard this conversation 100 times before. I'd sat through this breakfast and felt small and invisible and resentful, but now I knew. Now I knew that in 7 years, Emily would have everything she ever wanted, and it would all be built on my corpse. Not this time. After breakfast, I went to my room and pulled out my laptop. It was ancient, slow, but it worked. I opened a new document and stared at the blank page. I could write Whispers in the Rain again. I had every word memorized. I'd lived with that story for so long that it was burned into my DNA. But if I wrote it exactly the same way, what would stop Emily from stealing it again? No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to protect myself in ways I hadn't known to do before. I created a new email address, one Emily didn't know about. I set up a cloud storage account. I took pictures of every single page in my purple notebook with my phone and uploaded them with timestamps. I researched copyright law for 3 hours straight. Then I did something I'd never done before. I emailed my work to myself with a clear subject line. Whispers in the Rain, Clara Morrison, original work. I sent myself a chapter a day, creating a paper trail. But that wasn't enough. In my old life, I'd let Emily borrow the notebook because I'd been afraid of conflict. This time, I wouldn't give her the chance. I went to the store and bought a safe, a small one with a combination lock. I put all my notebooks inside. I kept my laptop password protected and changed the password weekly. I became obsessive about backing up my work, and I kept writing. The story was different now. It had to be. I knew the ending, knew how the betrayal would taste, knew the exact shade of Emily's lies. So I changed things. I made the protagonist stronger. I made the villain more subtle. I wove in layers I hadn't seen at 18 because I hadn't lived through what I'd lived through. Whispers in the Rain became something better, something darker and truer and more raw. 3 months passed. I worked my receptionist job during the day and wrote at night. I avoided family dinners when I could. I stopped lending Emily money, stopped doing her favors, stopped being useful. You've been so distant lately, Emily said one night, cornering me in the hallway. And, is something wrong? Are you mad at me? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was genuinely confused. In this timeline, she hadn't done anything wrong yet. She was just my sister, annoying and spoiled, but not yet a thief. But I remembered her face at Mawansa, the book signing. I remembered her laughing with our mother about how Clara always was jealous of me. I remembered dying on that marble floor while she smiled. I'm not mad, I said. I'm just busy. With your writing? She bit her lip. Can I read it? I'd love to see what you're working on. No. The word came out harder than I intended. Emily actually stepped back. Oh, she said, her eyes widening. Okay, I thought we could share our creative stuff like we used to. We'd never shared creative stuff. She'd never written a word of fiction in her life. This was already the groundwork, I realized. This was her setting up the narrative that we collaborated, that the line between her work and mine was blurry. I'm not ready to share it yet, I said more gently. Maybe later. But I never would, not with her, not ever again. 6 months into my rebirth, I finished the first draft. It was 120,000 words of pain and beauty and truth. It was better than the version Emily had stolen. It was the best thing I'd ever written. I edited it myself, meticulously, obsessively. I researched literary agents. I crafted the perfect query letter. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break, I sent it out to 15 agents. I got my first rejection 3 days later, then another, then another. I remembered this part, the soul-crushing parade of not right for our list and didn't connect with the voice and the market is tough right now. In my old life, this had broken me. I'd given up after 20 rejections, shelved the book, kept writing it only for myself. That's when Emily had seen her opportunity. But this time, I didn't give up. I sent out more queries. I revised my opening chapter. I researched agents who liked dark contemporary fiction. I treated this like a job because it was my life. 3 months later, I got an email that started with, "I stayed up all night reading your manuscript." The agent's name was Rebecca Chen, and she loved Whispers in the Rain. She had notes, thoughtful, intelligent notes that made the book stronger. She believed in it. She believed in me. We signed a contract in December. By February, the book was on submission to publishers. By April, we had a 2-book deal with a major publishing house for a 6-figure advance. I was 20 years old and I just sold my debut novel. I told my parents at dinner. My mother was setting the table. We were having Emily's favorite meal again, even though Emily wasn't even home, when I said, "I have some news." My father looked up from his phone. "Did you finally apply to that administrative assistant position at the hospital?" "No," I said. "I sold my novel. I have a book deal." Silence. My mother froze with a serving spoon in her hand. My father's mouth actually fell open. "You what?" my mother said. "I wrote a book. An agent signed me. We sold it to a publisher. It's coming out next year." "How much?" my father asked, his business mind already calculating. "Enough to move out," I said. "Enough to pay back every penny you spent on my first 2 years of college. Enough to live on while I write the second book." My mother sat down heavily. "You're not serious." "I'm completely serious. The contract is signed. The advance is being processed. I'm going to be a published author." I watched them try to process this. I was supposed to be the disappointment. I was supposed to be the one who never quite measured up to Emily. And now I'd done something Emily couldn't do, something real, something validated by people who didn't share our DNA. "Well," my father said finally, that's very surprising, Clara." "Does Emily know?" my mother asked. Of course, that would be her first question. "No," I said. "I'm telling her this weekend when she comes home." But Emily didn't wait until the weekend. My mother called her within an hour, and Emily drove home that night. She burst into my room without knocking, her face flushed with what looked like excitement. "Clara, Mom told me, a book deal. That's incredible." I was at my desk working on book 2. I'd learned to keep my laptop angled away from doors. "Thanks," I said, not turning around. "Can I read it? I want to read it so badly. My sister, the author." She bounced on her toes. This was Emily in full charm mode, the version of her that made people understand why everyone loved her. But I'd seen behind the mask. I'd watched her lie to Oprah. "It's with the publisher now," I said. "They're editing it. Maybe when it comes out, you can buy a copy." Her smile faltered. "Buy a copy? Clara, I'm your sister." "I know." I met her eyes. "That's why I'm sure you'll want to support me by purchasing the book like everyone else." Something flickered across her face. Confusion, maybe? Or the first whisper of anger. "You're being weird again. You've been weird for months. What's going on with you?" Nothing's going on with me. I'm just focused on my career now. Your career? She said it like it was a joke. It's one book, Clara. Don't let it go to your head. I won't, I promised. But I was lying. I was going to let it go to my head. I was going to let it consume me. I was going to become everything I should have been in the life where she stole my soul. The book came out in September, 2 years after my rebirth. The publisher had high hopes but modest expectations. It was a debut, after all, by an unknown author with no platform. It hit the New York Times bestseller list in week 1. By week 3, it was number 1. By month 2, there were foreign rights deals in 23 languages. By month 4, there were movie offers. Whispers in the Rain became a phenomenon in exactly the way it had in my original timeline. But this time, my name was on the cover. This time, I was the one on morning shows and podcasts and panel discussions. This time, when people talked about the brilliant debut of the year, they were talking about me. And Emily had to watch. She came to my book launch. The whole family did. They stood in the back of the bookstore while I signed copies and took pictures with readers. I watched my mother's face as person after person told her how proud she must be, how talented her daughter was. Yes, my mother said, her smile tight. We always knew Clara was creative. Emily bought a copy of the book. She stood in line like everyone else, and when she reached the front, she placed it on the table in front of me. Make it out to your biggest fan, she said, but her voice was strained. I picked up my pen. In my old life, Emily had never dedicated the book to me. She'd thanked our parents, her agent, her editor, her friends. She'd thanked everyone but the person who'd actually written every word. I wrote, "To Emily, I hope you enjoy reading the words I wrote. Clara." Her hand tightened on the book when she read it. That's a weird inscription, she said. Is it? I smiled at her. I just wanted to be clear that these are my words, mine alone. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw it. The exact moment she realized she'd lost something she'd never actually had. The exact moment she understood that whatever she'd been planning, whatever she'd been setting up with her comments about sharing creative work, it was over before it began. Congratulations, Clara, she said finally, and walked away. The money changed everything. I moved out of my parents' house into an apartment in the city. I quit my receptionist job. I wrote book 2, and it was even better than book 1. I wrote book 3. I built a career, and Emily struggled. She'd been coasting through college on her looks and charm. She had no real skills, no real ambitions beyond wanting to be famous. She'd planned to marry rich, maybe, or leverage her last name once I became successful in some other field she could exploit. But she hadn't expected me to become successful in writing, the one thing she couldn't fake her way through. She dropped out of college her senior year, started and stopped 3 different jobs, moved back in with our parents, started drinking too much, dated a series of men who were worse than the last. I watched it happen with a strange detachment. I didn't cause Emily's downfall. I'd simply removed myself as her safety net, her source of borrowed dreams. Without me to leech from, she'd collapsed under the weight of her own emptiness. My mother called me 6 months after my second book hit the bestseller list. You need to help your sister, she said without preamble. Help her how? She's struggling, Clara. She's depressed, she needs money, and she needs purpose. You could hire her as your assistant, or introduce her to your agent. She wants to write too, you know. I laughed. I actually laughed. Emily has never written a single word of fiction in her life, Mom. She's been working on something, my mother insisted. She just needs guidance. You could mentor her. No. No? My mother's voice went sharp. Clara, she's your sister. Family helps family. Where was the family help when I was working 2 jobs to help pay for Emily's college? Where was the family support when I was eating burned waffles while you made Emily's favorite breakfast every single morning? Where was the family when I needed someone to believe in me? Silence on the other end of the line. You've changed, my mother said finally. Success has made you cruel. No, I said. Success has made me honest. There's a difference. She hung up on me. My father called next. He tried a different approach. Logic, reason, family duty. When that didn't work, he tried guilt. When that didn't work, he tried anger. I let him yell himself out and then said, I'm not giving Emily money, I'm not hiring her, and I'm not introducing her to my agent. She needs to build her own life. I'm done building it for her. You're being selfish, he said. Yes, I agreed. I am. It's wonderful. I hung up and blocked both their numbers. The third book came out and debuted at #1. The movie adaptation of the first book went into production with an Oscar-winning director. I bought a house, a beautiful, sprawling house with a library and a view of the mountains. I adopted 2 cats. I lived my dream. And then Emily did something I should have anticipated. She tried to claim the story anyway. 3 years after my rebirth, an article appeared in a gossip magazine. Best-selling author's sister claims she was the real writer behind Whispers in the Rain. Emily had given an interview claiming that we'd written the book together, that I'd cut her out of the credit, that I'd stolen her ideas. She had no proof, but she didn't need proof for the court of public opinion. The article went viral. Justice for Emily started trending on social media. People who'd never read my book suddenly had strong opinions about my character. My publisher called in a panic. My agent scheduled an emergency meeting. I sat in my library with my cats and felt a cold fury settle over me. She'd tried it anyway. Even without the notebooks, even without access to my drafts, she'd tried to steal my story. I called Rebecca, my agent. I need you to get me on 60 Minutes, I said. The interview aired on a Sunday night. I sat across from one of the most respected journalists in the country and told the truth, some of it. My sister and I were never close, I said. We grew up in a home where I was expected to sacrifice for her success. I paid for part of her college with my own earnings. I was the one who was supposed to fade into the background and make her shine. I pulled out my phone and showed the journalist the timestamps. I wrote Whispers in the Rain when I was 18 years old. I have every draft, every revision, every email to myself documenting the process. I have the original notebooks, photographed and dated. I can prove beyond any doubt that I am the sole author of this book and every book that came after it. Why do you think your sister is making these claims? The journalist asked. I looked directly into the camera. Because Emily has never created anything of her own in her entire life. She's beautiful and charming, and she's used to having things given to her. She can't accept that I, boring, plain Clara, could create something successful without her permission. The journalist leaned forward. That's a harsh assessment of your own sister. It's an honest one, I said. And I have something else to show you. I'd saved it for this moment. The recording I'd made before any of this started, before I'd even sent out my first query letter. Me sitting at my desk reading the first 3 chapters of Whispers in the Rain aloud with the date clearly visible on my laptop screen in the background. I recorded this as insurance, I said, because even at 20 years old, I knew that my family would try to take this from me. I knew that in their minds, I didn't deserve success. I couldn't fathom that I could create something of value, so I protected myself. The interview destroyed Emily's credibility. The gossip sites that had been pushing #justice for Emily pivoted to #Clara Morrison is an icon. My book sales tripled. Emily deleted all her social media accounts, but I wasn't done. I wrote book 4 and I dedicated it to everyone who was told they weren't good enough. I wrote book 5 and the protagonist was a young woman escaping a toxic family. I wrote book 6 and it was about a woman who reclaimed everything that had been stolen from her. Each book was an exorcism. Each book was a middle finger to everyone who'd ever made me feel small. 5 years after my rebirth, I was 30 years old in a 23-year-old body. I had 10 best-selling novels. I had a net worth in the millions. I had a career that would have seemed impossible in my old life. And Emily had nothing. She was 25, still living with our parents, working part-time at a retail store. Her social media scandal had followed her everywhere. She'd tried to reinvent herself, tried to become an influencer, tried to leverage her connection to me, but nothing stuck. My parents had burned through their savings supporting her. They'd taken out loans, they'd mortgaged their house, and when they ran out of options, they came to me. They showed up at my house on a Saturday morning. I almost didn't let them in. I'd gone fully no contact 2 years earlier, but Curiosity won out. They looked older, tired. My mother's perfect hair was gray at the roots. My father's shoulders sagged. "We need to talk about Emily," my father said. "No, we don't," I replied. "Clara, please." My mother's voice broke. "She's in trouble. Real trouble. The credit card debt, the loans. We can't keep up with it. We're going to lose the house." "You could always sell some of Emily's things," I suggested. "All those clothes and shoes and designer bags you bought her over the years. Those must be worth something." "This isn't a joke," my father snapped. "We're your family." "No," I said clearly. "You were people who happened to share a house with me. Family is supposed to support each other. Family is supposed to love each other equally. You never treated me like family. You treated me like a resource to be exploited for Emily's benefit." "We did our best," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Your best was making me eat burned waffles while you made Emily's favorite breakfast every morning. Your best was telling me to get a real job while you paid for Emily's useless degree. Your best was believing her lies over my truth every single time." I stood up. "I don't owe you anything. I don't owe her anything. You made your choice 23 years ago when you decided one daughter mattered more than the other. Now you get to live with it." "You're going to let us lose everything?" my father said. "You're that heartless?" "I'm not letting you do anything," I said. "You made your own choices. You prioritized Emily for decades. You created a monster, and now you're surprised that she's destroying you." I walked to the door and opened it. "Get out of my house." They left. They tried calling, tried emailing, tried showing up again. I blocked them on everything. I hired security. 6 months later, they lost the house. They moved into a small apartment. Emily moved with them. The three of them crammed into a 2-bedroom unit, living on Social Security and my father's meager retirement. I heard about it through Rebecca, who heard it through the publishing industry grapevine. Apparently, Emily had tried to pitch her story as a memoir. My sister stole my book and my life. Not a single agent was interested. I was working on book 7 when I got an unexpected message on my website's contact form. It was from Emily. "Clara, I know you probably won't read this. I know you hate me, but I need to say something. You were right about everything. I did want to take credit for your writing. I was going to steal those notebooks. Mom encouraged it. Did you know that? She said you didn't have the personality to make it as an author, that you'd waste the story, that I could do more with it because I was prettier and more charismatic. I believed her. I believed that I deserved your work more than you did. I don't know how you knew. I don't know how you stopped it. But watching you succeed with something I thought would be mine, it broke me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for help. I just wanted you to know that you won. Completely. Totally. You won. I hope that makes you happy. Emily." I read the message 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and went to the window. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Did it make me happy? I thought about the marble floor, the blood, the betrayal. I thought about dying while she smiled. I thought about 7 years of my life stolen, compressed into a moment of cosmic injustice so profound that the universe itself had flinched and given me another chance. I thought about the 18-year-old girl I'd been, exhausted, overlooked, determined to create something beautiful despite everything. I thought about how she'd deserved better than what her family gave her, and I thought about who I was now, successful, vindicated, free. "Yes," I said to my empty office. "It does make me happy." I never responded to Emily's message. There was nothing to say. Book 7 came out and debuted at number 1. The Hollywood adaptation of Book 3 won an Academy Award. I bought a second house in Italy. I fell in love with a software engineer who'd never heard of me when we met, who loved me for who I was, not what I'd accomplished. I lived. 10 years after my rebirth, I was 40 years old with a 28-year-old body. I had 20 novels published, all bestsellers. I had a legacy. I had peace. Emily was 35, working as a waitress, still living with our parents in their tiny apartment. My mother had developed dementia and didn't recognize her half the time. My father's health was failing. Emily was alone, caring for 2 elderly people who'd created the monster she'd become. I heard about it from a second cousin who tracked me down at a book signing. You should help them, she said. Their family. They made their choices, I said. I'm making mine. I signed her book and moved on to the next reader. That night, I had a dream about the marble floor, about dying while Emily smiled. But this time when I woke up, I didn't feel the rage or the fear or the helplessness. I felt gratitude. That death, that betrayal, had given me this life. It had given me the knowledge I needed to protect myself, to fight back, to win. It had given me the fire to become something my family never imagined I could be. I was 18 when I came back. I was 28 now, measured by this life's calendar, but I'd lived 40 years in my soul. I'd died and been reborn, and I'd used my second chance to build something my family could never take from me. Emily had borrowed my favorite book, my life's work, my heart on pages, and never returned it. But I'd done something better than get it back. I'd written 20 more. I'd created an empire from the ashes of betrayal. I'd turned pain into bestsellers and rage into art. I'd proven that the overlooked daughter, the disappointing one, the one who wasn't supposed to amount to anything, could create something so successful that it eclipsed everyone who doubted her. The critics called me a literary phenomenon. The readers called me their favorite author. The industry called me a powerhouse. But the title I loved most was the one I gave myself, Survivor. I survived the toxic family. I survived the death, survived the rebirth, into a world where I knew exactly how cruel the people who were supposed to love me could be. And I'd done more than survive. I'd thrived. Book 21 was in progress. A story about a woman who died and came back with the knowledge to destroy everyone who'd ever hurt her. It was going to be my masterpiece, even better than Whispers in the Rain. It was going to be the culmination of everything I'd learned, everything I'd overcome. My publisher had already committed to a 7-figure marketing campaign. The movie rights had sold before I'd even finished the first draft. It was going to be the biggest book of my career. And Emily would have to see it. My parents would have to see it. Everyone who'd ever made me feel worthless would have to watch me succeed again and again and again. That was my revenge, I realized. Not destruction. That would be too quick, too merciful. My revenge was success. My revenge was living well. My revenge was making them watch while I became everything they said I couldn't be. 15 years after my rebirth, I stood in front of a crowd of 5,000 people at a conference center. I was 45 years old with a 33-year-old body. I had 30 novels published. I had a movie franchise, a TV series, a gaming deal. My books had been translated into 70 languages. I'd won every major award in literature. I was giving a keynote speech about overcoming obstacles. I grew up in a house where I was told I wasn't good enough, I said into the microphone, where my dreams were considered foolish, where my efforts were dismissed, where I existed only to make someone else's life easier. I was the daughter who didn't matter, who wasn't worth investing in, who was supposed to disappear into the background. 5,000 faces looked up at me, rapt. But I didn't disappear. I wrote. I wrote in the margins of my life, in the hours between work shifts, in the quiet moments when everyone else was asleep. I wrote because I had to, because the stories inside me demanded to exist, because creating something beautiful was the only way I knew to prove I mattered. I paused, looking out at the audience. And then I sold my first book, and it became a bestseller. And suddenly the family that had dismissed me wanted to claim me. They wanted credit for my success. They wanted me to share what I'd built with people who'd never believed in me. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I said no. And that no saved my life. That no let me build a career beyond my wildest dreams. That no gave me the freedom to become exactly who I was meant to be. I smiled. So if you're the person in your family who doesn't quite fit, who dreams too big, who wants too much, know this. Your family's opinion of you is not the truth. Your family's limitations are not your limitations. You can build something extraordinary especially if the people who are supposed to love you don't believe you can. The applause was deafening. After the speech, a young woman approached me at the signing table. She couldn't have been more than 19. She reminded me of myself at that age. Serious eyes, worn clothes, a desperation to be seen. My sister keeps asking to read my manuscript, she said quietly. She says she just wants to help, but something feels wrong about it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw myself at 18. I saw the girl I'd been, the one who'd trusted too easily, who'd given too much, who'd learned the hardest way possible that family could be your biggest enemy. Don't give it to her, I said firmly. Password protect your files. Back everything up to the cloud with timestamps. Email drafts to yourself. Keep a physical notebook in a safe place, and if she asks again, say no. You don't need to explain yourself. No is a complete sentence. The girl's eyes widened. You think she'd steal it? I think that people who love you support your dreams without needing access to them, I said. I think that real support doesn't require you to hand over your work, and I think that if your gut is telling you something's wrong, you should listen to it. I signed her book and wrote, protect your words, protect your dreams, protect yourself. Clara Morrison. She thanked me with tears in her eyes and walked away clutching the book to her chest. That night, I sat in my home office, my enormous, beautiful office with floor-to-ceiling windows and shelves lined with my books in every language, and thought about Emily. I wondered if she still thought about Whispers in the Rain. I wondered if she understood that stealing that book wouldn't have made her a writer, would have just made her a thief. Writing isn't about having words on a page. It's about the years of work, the drafts and revisions, the discipline and dedication. Emily had wanted the glory without the labor. She'd wanted the destination without the journey. She'd never understood that the book wasn't the point. The book was just evidence of the work. The real achievement was becoming the kind of person who could create something of value. And Emily had never done the work to become that person. I pulled up my email and searched for her message from years ago. I hope that makes you happy, she'd written. I hit reply for the first time. Emily, you asked if winning made me happy. The answer is yes, but not for the reasons you think. I'm not happy because you failed. I'm happy because I succeeded. I'm not happy because you're suffering. I'm happy because I'm thriving. You thought my work was something you could take. You thought my dreams were something you could borrow and never return. But the truth is, you never could have stolen what I built. The words on the page were just the visible part. The real work, the discipline, the growth, the willingness to fail and try again, that was never something you wanted. You wanted the easy path. You wanted success without effort, and when that didn't work out, you wanted someone to blame. I don't hate you, Emily. I pity you, because you'll never know what it feels like to create something meaningful. You'll never know the satisfaction of building a life through your own effort. You'll never know who you could have been if you'd done your own work instead of trying to steal mine. I hope you find something to be proud of someday, something that's actually yours. But I won't be here to see it. This is goodbye. Clara. I sent the email and immediately blocked her address. That chapter of my life was over. Emily was a ghost from a timeline that didn't exist anymore. A warning, a lesson, a memory of who I'd been and who I'd become. I opened a new document and started typing. Book 31 was going to be about sisters, one who created and one who consumed. It was going to be about the price of betrayal and the power of self-belief. It was going to be my most personal work yet. The words flowed like water, like wine, like blood. I wrote for 3 hours straight, lost in the story, building something new from the raw material of my life. This was my revenge, I thought again. Not silence, not punishment, not even success, though that was certainly part of it. My revenge was refusing to let them diminish me. My revenge was building a life so full, so rich, so completely mine that their opinions became irrelevant. My revenge was becoming so undeniably successful that they couldn't deny it, couldn't take credit for it, couldn't touch it. My revenge was living well. 20 years after my rebirth, I turned 50 years old with a 38-year-old body. I had 50 novels published, one for each year of my life, a perfect symmetry. I had grandchildren from my stepchildren, a loving partner, a legacy that would outlive me. I got word that my father had died. Heart attack, sudden. My mother's dementia had progressed to the point where she didn't understand. Emily was alone now, 45 years old, with nothing to show for her life but wasted potential and borrowed dreams. I didn't go to the funeral. I sent flowers, expensive ones, with a card that said simply, "Condolences, Clara Morrison." Let them display the card. Let everyone at the funeral see that the successful daughter, the famous one, the one they'd dismissed, had acknowledged their loss with expensive flowers and emotional distance. A week later, I got a call from Emily. I almost didn't answer. I'd changed my number 3 times since going no contact, but somehow she'd tracked it down. "How did you get this number?" I asked instead of hello. "Does it matter?" Her voice was rough, older. "Dad's dead, Clara. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "I sent flowers." "Flowers." She laughed bitterly. "Our father is dead, and you sent flowers like he was a business acquaintance." "What did you want me to send?" I asked. "Tears? Grief? I mourned the father I deserved to have a one long time ago. The man who actually existed, I have no feelings about him at all." Silence on the other end, then. "You really don't care, do you?" "No," I said honestly. "I don't. And that's your fault. Yours, his, Mom's. You all spent so many years making sure I knew I didn't matter that you forgot I might stop caring back." "I'm alone now," Emily said. "Mom doesn't know who I am half the time. I have no one." "You have exactly what you built," I said. "Just like I have exactly what I built. The difference is I built something worth having." "Clara, don't call me again," I said, and hung up. I blocked the number and went back to my work. Book 51 was calling. The story was about a woman who died and was reborn, who used her second chance to build an empire, who won so completely that her enemies destroyed themselves simply by being who they'd always been. It was my story. All my books had been my story, really, told in different ways through different lenses. But this one would be the most direct. A revenge fantasy made real, a tale of justice so perfect it bordered on fairy tale. Except it wasn't a fairy tale. It was my life. I wrote the last line of the manuscript and sat back, exhausted and exhilarated. 51 books, 51 worlds built from nothing but words and determination. 51 testaments to the fact that I mattered, that I'd always mattered, regardless of what my family believed. The book came out 6 months later and became my biggest success yet. Critics called it my magnum opus. Readers called it transformative. The movie rights sold for a record-breaking amount. Emily saw it. She had to have seen it. The whole world saw it. And I hoped it hurt. I hoped every success hurt. I hoped that watching me thrive while she crumbled was an exquisite agony, because that pain was the only thing she'd earned in her entire life. 25 years after my rebirth, I was 55 years old with a 43-year-old body. I'd published 70 novels. I'd been adapted into countless films, series, video games. I'd inspired a generation of writers who'd grown up reading my work. I received word that my mother had died. Quietly, in a nursing home with Emily by her side, I felt nothing. Emily sent me one final message. "She asked for you at the end. She said she was sorry. I thought you'd want to know." I deleted the message without responding. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry would never be enough. Sorry didn't give me back the childhood I deserved, the support I needed, the love I'd earned simply by existing. Sorry was what you said when you'd done everything you could, and it still wasn't quite right. They'd never done everything they could. They'd barely done anything at all. I was 55 years old, and I'd spent more than half my life building something beautiful from the ashes of my family's cruelty. I'd created a legacy that would outlast all of us. I'd proven beyond any doubt that I mattered. And that was enough. I sat down at my desk and opened a new document. Book 71. Another world to build, another story to tell, another testament to the fact that I'd survived, thrived, and won. The cursor blinked at me, patient and infinite. I began to type. The rain came down in sheets, and with it came the memories I'd tried so hard to forget. The same opening line as Whispers in the Rain, but this time it meant something different. This time it wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering who I'd been, what I'd overcome, how far I'd come. This time it was about victory. I wrote through the night, the words flowing faster than I could capture them. This was what I was born to do. This was who I was meant to be. Not the daughter my family wanted, not the sister Emily needed to make herself feel better, not the resource they could exploit. A writer, a creator, a woman who'd been knocked down by fate itself and had stood up swinging. As the sun rose over the mountains, painting my office in shades of gold, I typed the dedication for Book 71. For everyone who was told they weren't enough, you are. You always were. And for everyone who tried to make me small, look at me now. I saved the document, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and emailed it to myself with a timestamp. Some habits die hard, but I'd learned the most important lesson. Protect your work, protect your dreams, protect yourself. Because in the end, the only person guaranteed to fight for you is you. I'd fought, I'd won. And I was still fighting, still winning, still building something beautiful from the wreckage of what could have been. Emily had borrowed my favorite book and never returned it. But I'd written 70 more, with no end in sight, and that was the greatest revenge of all.